My hair's doing cutesy gally things, but I'm still figuring out what I'm doing with the front bit. I think this is quite cute. Oh, I love the little flicky stuff. I think it's adorable. So, I believe that some of you may have heard of the Miss Universe, Miss World, Miss England competition. And I have never been one for pageants, if I'm really honest. I've never considered putting myself in one of them. And as far as my attention for them has gone, it's been Miss Congeniality as a child and watching that film. And I thought the fact that Sandra Bullock was a spy was a lot cooler than the girls participating, just because she was out in the real world doing quite kick-ass things, to be honest, and they all had the same answers, and I just thought it was not the best use of time. But that being said, there was also this documentary I watched about these young girls in America where the families had forced them to take part in these pageants. And I always found it absurd the fact that they spent so much money investing in all these dresses and getting to these competitions, and the prizes did not even near enough cover the investment. So I've never been one to consider pageants. I think the girls look gorgeous, and there's also male pageants, and the guys, I'm sure, look lovely too. I have never looked into male pageants, to be honest, and the only reason I've seen female ones is because one of my friends participates in them. But that being said, it I just yeah, it's not really been something I've ever gone, oh, I really want to do that. However, on the weekend, I was out and about, and I was essentially scouted by this reporter to maybe be put in touch with the regional manager for the Miss England competition. And this lady has been doing it for 22 years. So if there was a contact to have, if you wanted to get into this, she was the lady to contact. And I shot her a message after this journalist put us in touch, and we had a little phone call. And in the phone call, she was giving me an idea of what it's like to be in this competition. And actually, as the conversation progressed, I found myself realizing that a lot of this stuff is actually what I'm passionate about. They cover charity work. I'm passionate about this. Sustainability. I'm going to become very passionate about this. I even wrote some of the sustainable issues in my dissertation at university. Beyond that, they work with children, they have a sporty side, an intelligent side. And I quickly realized, and so did this regional director, that I could actually be a very good fit for this because it covers a lot of things that are very organic to myself naturally. And I was not opposed to potentially giving it a go. Nonetheless, as we are conversing, and it comes to light that I could actually be exactly what this region needs as a representative, there comes the question: are you married and do you have children? I respond, I'm not married, but I do have children. And she goes, oh, that's a shame. It's actually a huge disappointment because you'd be a perfect fit for this, apart from the fact that you've got children. And I'm just there like, I was actually too stunned to speak, to be honest, because what do you mean? And she goes on to explain how the Miss England, they have this rule where you are not allowed to participate if you are married and you're not allowed to participate if you have children. To which I am mind blown. Because you're telling me in the grand day and age of 2026, a pageant slash competition that is supposed to advertise and compete for the epitome of womanhood is not including quite a significant population of females based on the fact that they have done what biological females tend to do in their life, which is deliver life and the reason we are all here, as well as the fact that if you choose to be married, that's also not allowed. And I actually needed a minute to just compute this information. So she tried to go on to explain how it's just a rule, it's always been a rule. And I'm just thinking, there's a few red flags here. Apparently, I am perfect to represent girlhood, just not if I've actually lived it. Let's expand on the absurdity and gently dismantle this. I've written some points down because I wanted to make sure the points were crisp. So they promote charity and real women, yet exclude mothers, married women. In a world where women run businesses, raise families, lead politically, and I'm rather passionate about this because obviously I've worked in politics and I studied while being a young single mum, and I also worked and juggled a lot of this together. So for me, I'm very passionate about the fact that just because you are the biological carrier of life, that and the men tend to just run off if they want to and it's a lot feasible for them, women should not be limited from having access to building a life for themselves. And when I'm met with something like this, where I can see there is a random restriction where there need not be one, I get quite riled up. It rubs me the wrong way. So I mentioned to her the fact that, well, actually, I'd be a perfect candidate for this because if they work with children, I can raise awareness to a lot of things that I've experienced and witnessed firsthand and only know about because of my experience of being a young single mum, such as premature babies. I gave birth to my twins prematurely, and that was a whole experience in itself and brought a lot of awareness to myself and the people in my life, as well as the fact that I have resilience. I have lived experience. I've been able to see a lot of different situations when it comes to what it's like to give birth, things that go wrong with that. That's not an isolated experience. I remember looking at something about the compensation that is paid out to avoidable mistakes that have happened in the NHS for births, basically. And there is a lot of subjects that I could literally list and bullet point. I could probably write a whole book about it, which really need work. And I mentioned all of this. And essentially, I've done more real world advocacy through motherhood than pretending when I haven't lived it. So if I hadn't had kids, I wouldn't know about any of this. And I probably wouldn't have lived and gone through the journey that I have. And I feel very grateful that even though I've gone through adversity and it's been at times traumatic, it's been at times really tough, I have come out stronger on the other side. And I know so much more about the real world and I don't live in a bubble. And I'd bring a lot more attention. And the only reason I'm perfect for this role is because of everything I've gone through and the fact that I do indeed have children. I want to zoom out to the whole bigger picture here because pageants are still operating on this ideal woman who is unattached by responsibility, and society now values depth, resilience, real lived experience because that takes away from this idea that we all need to fit this stereotypical perfect image of having it all together because most of us don't. And the fact that we can normalize that means that we spend less time worrying about fitting into some sort of status quo and actually just focusing on finding ourselves and finding the path that best suits us. They don't want a woman. They want a moment in time before she becomes one. Bit baffled, to be honest. If Miss England is about empowering women, why are they disqualifying the ones that have quite literally created life? I don't really want to discuss it further. I believe I'll just leave it on a question of perhaps the final thought should not be why don't I fit the rules, but why does a pageant that's supposedly empowering women and doing all this amazing charity work for every different field you could think of not caught up with the modern day and age and is essentially cancelling out the hard work of women's rights like the suffragettes? Yeah.